you know, if you had eyes to see what was going on behind the scenes here, you'll be wondering what was.
No,
you're meeting the spirit of Christmas.
It was the tip of the iceberg at the beginning.
And okay, she's planning something for you.
Okay.
But
let's hold on to it.
We're now going to take a look at the environment, a focus on the Nigerian environment. About 3 weeks ago, the United Nations Climate Change Conference held in France, and Nigeria was a participant in that conference. Since 1992, Nigeria has given some prominence to handling of climate change matters through the establishment of the Federal Environmental Protection Agency. That conference that happened in France, as I said, Nigeria was a major part of it. And during that conference, France urged the Nigerian government to submit its intended national determined contributions, a climate change plan, to the United Nations. The federal government was also told to immediately embark on I'm trying to get the exact word, post-petroleum economy and diversify the energy mix to renewable sources of energy. Okay. One person that was key at that conference is the Minister of Environment, who joins us today in our Abuja studios, Hajia Amina Mohammed, Minister of Environment. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, it's really difficult to hear you, but good morning and Merry Christmas and season greetings to all Nigerians. And let me just quickly, before you start, let me just add my condolences to all those.
Okay, I believe we're still here. Okay, can you hear us now?
Just about. Let's give it a try.
Okay, we want to look at the situation, the fallout of that conference, the United Nations Climate Change Conference in France. What was Nigeria able to achieve from that, or how would I put it now? What did Nigeria come away with from that conference?
Okay, I think first of all, a recognition worldwide from leaders that climate change is very real, and that after many years, we come away with a historic agreement that actually pays attention to what we need to do to reduce those emissions. Sending a message that we are going below 2 degrees, but trying to head to 1.5 was a really, I think it's monumental success, because it actually means our economies now, investments that we have will start driving towards
those ambitions that we have tried for long. This is an agreement that we have tried to get since Copenhagen, which failed. So I think we come away with more investments in the right direction, technology, a balanced approach to adaptation and mitigation. So for us, that I think is a big support of our INDCs. A year ago, we didn't have INDCs. By the time we got to Paris, we had majority of countries, I think bar 6 countries, achieve quite ambitious INDCs. What's important about that is that it's countries' intentions and not something that is forced upon us. So we've taken trajectories that we think that we can address, those that we can do unconditionally, and those that we have to do conditionally, depending on what our developed countries will do to assist.
All right, let's quickly look into Nigeria's policy on environment. Can you just let us into some of the policies that we have right now?
Okay, I think you're speaking about the policy environment. First, we do have an environmental policy, we do have a climate change policy, but we are trying at the moment to enact a revision on the law. This has been long in the making. What we've got is a process that has gone past the Council on Environment and stakeholders meetings. We will be taking it to the Federal Executive Council and then engaging with the National Assembly to get a law that is responsive to today's challenges, which faces more than just climate change. It is about the environment as well. It is about being a core part of what we want to do with our economy going forward.
Okay, before we go, I'll just take you back a bit before we come back to the policy on environment that Nigeria has. You talked about the INDCs, and what was Nigeria's version of the INDCs? You said 6 countries or thereabout had their own INDCs. What did Nigeria go out there with? What are the intentions of the federal government as regards our environment before you even talk about revamping or reviewing the environmental laws we have now?
Wow. Okay, I lost you halfway through that, but if you want some specificity around the focus of what we have in the INDCs, apart from committing ourselves to the emissions that we would like to reduce. Now, this is hard for Nigeria because we are an economy that is growing. And so unless we grow green, those emissions will not come down. In fact, they will increase. And so it's important that we get it right in the plans that we have for how we grow the economy and the assistance that we get, both from what we have from our domestic resources and actions that we need to take, but also from the international partners. We put specificity on the climate smart agriculture. What does that mean? It really means that the way we will diversify the economy, taking agriculture into account, for climate change, we will look at climate resistant agriculture, so it means that we have to use biotechnology to see that we have the agriculture industry responding to that. We will look at the way we use land and soil. We understand that there's an enormous amount of carbon that we release from the soil, so therefore finding modes of agriculture that will reduce that. We will also look at irrigation as a very big part of what we do in agriculture. We also talked about the transport system, and everyone who lives in Lagos knows the pollution that we face there from the transport system. But this is going to grow unless we really take hand what sort of transport systems are we going to have for the populations and the urban areas, how are we going to deal with the laws and regulation around that for the vehicles that come into Nigeria or those that are manufactured here. And then we also talked about reducing gas flaring. Gas flaring is an attempt that we've had over years and never achieved. Now we have set ourselves another target of 2030. We have to put in the mechanisms to enforce that, but also to look at what the transition means. Gas flaring, turning that into gas that we will use both in our homes, but also for powering the economy. And that in itself will create even more revenue. We're also looking at, in the diversification of the economy and looking for what we mitigate and adapt in terms of the pollution, is how we turn waste into wealth. Ultimately, this will have to be about empowering people, and that's the focus of the INDC, but it's about taking climate action as a federation on the 3 tiers of government, our constituents in civil society, in business, and it is about the regulations that we need to put in force for pollution.
Okay, if you look at China, for example, they have huge issue concerning the environment too. Pollution, you find people wearing nose masks. You've been around some parts of the country lately. What would you say you found out at some of those major issues concerning the climate in Nigeria?
Oh, that wasn't very clear to me, but if this was about the tour that we took around the country. I mean, that was really for me to see firsthand what this really meant in challenges from the south in Lagos to the attempts by Lagos state government to look at rising sea levels. Let me be clear here about the rising sea levels. There are things that we can do as a country to try to adapt, but there are many things that are dependent on what other countries do internationally. If emissions continue not to be driven towards 1.5 degrees and less, there's no amount of investments we do in our country that will stop those rising sea levels rise. So again, the legal agreement was important. Going to Lagos was to see the achievements that what was happening in around Bar Beach, and that I think was Atlantic City, was very impressive. But the second thing we did was to go further down and see at Alpha Beach really the rising sea levels and the challenge that those communities have, coming in faster than we have ever seen. And you will see that primary healthcare centers, people's businesses, all just being washed away by the sea. And I think that, you know, some of the things that we need to do to help that will be important, but we have to also hold the international community to account. We also visited some of the communities there, were living on water, but really to see the waste and the kind of pollution. And I believe that, you know, there are issues that have been taken up by Lagos State government, but this needs everyone to get on board. It needs especially communities, and one of the big challenges we have for pollution is going to be a good communication strategy. So here I applaud the partnership that we saw Channels TV and Deutsche Welle get into around educating and informing Nigerians about the issues of pollution, environment, climate change. I moved very quickly to the east and to the Niger Delta. The east, we really dealt with erosion, and erosion, a lot of it man-made. So therefore, we do have the solutions to it. Again, it's a better, knowledge sharing with communities on the things that they have to do in terms of waste disposal, channeling wastewater. In the Niger Delta, visiting some of the oil spill areas to see how much damage is not only done by oil companies, but also by we in the communities where there are illegal breakages of the lines. Incredibly tragic to see what is happening to the people and to the environment. We then moved to the north, where we witnessed the desertification, but also the challenges there of waste in terms of our plastic bags, and yet there are so many solutions to that, and that's what we really want to try to address, is that for every challenge we find a solution. It's clear that what we do with the environment, what we do with climate change is man-made, and we can find those solutions.
Yes, it's interesting to know that you mentioned that in the East, for instance, the issue of erosion, a lot of the times you say, is man-made. What is it that the people are doing to the environment that is causing this?
Some of it is land use, in fact, the way in which we build our homes. And the way we look at drainage. Certainly there has to be better master plans for the development of urban centers. And a lot of those drains are blocked. It's the wastage that blocks it. Maintenance of those areas, even when we do the erosion control, is another challenge. Some of the other challenges that I found is that there's insufficient investment over time so that you can address erosion in a much more comprehensive way. What we end up doing is a lot of band-aid treatment rather than looking at the root causes of some of these massive land issues, which we need to take much more holistically. I think we have to stop looking at just addressing a disaster. We do have to put something in as an emergency, but we really have to get back to what is causing this unstable soil. That soil needs better drainage. We need to use a lot of vegetation to keep it together. There is an awful lot of science now that goes into recognizing what you can do with erosion. And I think that what we will do in the ministry now is take a step back, gain what we have done in the small scale, and see how we can take this to scale, how we can find better partners, and how we can work much more deeply with local governments, communities, and states.
It's obvious that some will say you have your job cut out for you, but the issues you've raised here will require a lot of funding. What portion of the 2016 budget are you going to be putting into all of this that you need to achieve in the face of the dwindling revenues?
Well, the way I look at the environment, and I'm still learning, I'm very new to this in terms of the amount of knowledge one needs to address this issue. But I see this as a short, medium, and long-term approach. And what I hope is that we can lay down foundations in the short and medium term so that others that come after us can really continue to build on the way in which we green this economy. What the 2016 budget does for us, and I see that very much in our ministry as a budget of transition. We do have to get the regulatory and the legal environment in place. We have to reinforce some of those partnerships that we need with the private sector